Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Anne.
Today we're taking a look at Master of Respect.
Master of Respect is a game from Hobby Japan Company Limited for 3 to 5 players, ages 12 and up, and lasts about 45 to 60 minutes.
Great. Well, let's see who can expand their school to the fullest and earn the respect of the other masters. All right, setup is pretty quick and easy for this game. Every player will get to choose a master, and these masters are all color-coded.
Yes.
So what's nice about that is that you'll go find the action tiles that match your color. And then all the masters at the bottom of the card will have a starting materials. These materials are things like gold and alcohol and respect.
And each master has 2 students that are specific to that master that they are currently training from the beginning. You'll also pick a 3rd student that's dealt at random that has special in-game scoring that you and your master will be working towards points at the end.
Right, definitely. And it's really important to get those students up to the master level because they end up with negative points in the game if you don't do so.
Yes. All right, after every player has their individual starting pieces, you're going to take the board and set it where all players can see it and set the round marker at the very top to indicate the first round. The game is played over 5 rounds. So take the student cards, shuffle them up, and deal out the students equal to the number of players plus 1. These will be available throughout the game for your master to start training new students. Next, you'll take the action tiles. There's 2 tiles for each action, and you're going to select 9 of these. 9 to play with in this game, the other one's just going back into the box.
And what's cool about that, right, is that these action tiles had varying amounts of expense and resources to acquire. So you can really adjust the game level to some degree about making these tiles harder to acquire by picking all the more expensive ones, or you can just randomly put them out too. So you could really change up the game every time.
Yeah, and you can also change it based off of what the actions give you. So some of the actions give you a lot of money. So you can make it really easy to get money or really hard to get money. And the whole game is kind of this balance of money and alcohol and respect. And you kind of need it all to be able to get things working. So there's several different options in there. And basically, you're going to pick the 9 that you want available for this game.
And what's cool is there's some engine building happening, right? So you really have to decide, because you could have a game where alcohol is sparse, right? It'd be pretty interesting. So anyway, the last thing you're going to do is you're going to grab the gold and alcohol tokens and the respect token and the first player marker. Now, the first player marker, it goes to the person who most recently practiced martial arts.
Each round has 3 different phases. You start with instruction, then the execution phase, and finally return.
Great. Well, in the instruction phase, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your action tiles, right? And you will have placed them above your students, at least the students you want to activate.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to place an action tile above all of them if you don't want to.
And sometimes you might not have enough actions
to do
or enough students to have an action for every student.
That is correct. So the interesting thing here is that everyone does that simultaneously. And then on your turn, you'll be the first one to disclose that action. And when you disclose it, any number of things can be chosen on those actions. You can be acquiring gold, you can acquire respect, you can acquire more alcohol, or you're going to be trading gold for alcohol. There's lots of different ways these actions work. So it's really depending on how you want to build this engine to get those resources that you need, right?
And you also want to be intentional about when you're setting up which student is doing which action, you're going to go from left to right. So when you're planning, you're going to want to think about, okay, I want to do something that costs gold later, maybe your 3rd action with your 3rd student, but my 1st student, I need to acquire gold.
Right, because you might be prepping to get more students.
Right.
So it's pretty slick.
One thing to note when you are choosing your actions is that your starting action tiles have action choices on both the top and the bottom.
What's cool about that is there's some real decisions you have to make while placing these tiles.
Yes, every time I wanted to use both the top and the bottom.
I know.
So you'll want to be careful that you're orienting it the correct direction and, paying attention when you flip it over, that you're making the right choice.
Right.
Also, each each of your starting tiles are unique to you and your master, which was one thing I really liked, that, I might not have the same starting choices that you did or that Randy did.
And there's some real reason to try some of the different masters as you play games multiple times. So
for sure. And also, since all this is happening simultaneously, one thing I love is the artwork on these screens. I think they're so cool. So you can just pop up your screen, put your students in the correct order, because you don't want to know, you don't want other people to know what order you're putting your students in for something that comes later. But you can kind of get everything set up your students, set up your actions, and then you're ready to move on to the execution phase.
Yep. All right, then you're going to go ahead and execute these actions. And again, you're going to be acquiring gold, you're going to be acquiring alcohol or respect, or you might be acquiring new students or training those students.
You can also acquire new skills, which are essentially new actions to be used in the future as well.
And those new skills you acquire, though, only have one side, and you have to pay to acquire those skills.
Yep. So once a player has disclosed their action and they've executed their action, then you have the opportunity, the other players have the opportunity to pay respect. And essentially what that is saying, I really respect your action and your choice here, and I want to copy it.
And I believe that when we played, no one was respecting your actions.
I know.
That happened to happen more often.
Yeah. So what you'll do is you'll take your respect token, and again, this is something that you can acquire throughout the game, just like acquiring gold or alcohol. You'll take your face down respect action that's not been paid respect yet. Right. You'll flip it over, and you will give it to the person whose action you want to copy or pay respect to. And then you just get to execute the action just like they did.
As long as you can pay the cost.
Yes.
Depending on what it is, right? And it's important to note, some of the students, though, get goods when other people pay respect. So you might get a cube that is gold, or you might get extra alcohol or something, depending on the student.
Yeah, and this is where kind of some of that strategy comes in as far as which student is going to do which action. Yeah, obviously of the order that it's going to happen in, 1, 2, 3, 4, But also, if you have an action that you really think people are going to want to copy and pay respect for, you can stack that on top of your student and kind of, get the extra...
A little engine running there. It's pretty slick, actually. All right, so you're going to move around the table, everyone completing their actions, and you do so until all the actions have been spent. And that might be a thing where only you have 2 actions and Anne has 4 to execute. So she might get to do 2 things in a row, potentially.
Yeah, and so you'll be doing these one at a time.
Right.
So it'd be Randy does an action, and then Mark does an action, and then I'll do an action, each time having the opportunity to pay respect in between. So then it goes back to Mark. Mark can do an action, we can pay respect.
Right.
Randy can do an action, pay respect. So it's kind of interesting to see you plan everything out with your students and your actions, not knowing what you're going to have the opportunity to pay respect for.
Right.
But you'll keep doing this until all of the actions have been disclosed, even if it ends with one person doing 1 or 2 extra.
Right. But you can still pay respect to use those actions if you have respect available, which you can
might
run.
Not always have.
That's right. You can run out quite easily.
All right, and now we're on to the return phase, which starts with the tournament.
Yes.
And you don't do the tournament on the very first round of the game, but rounds 2 through 5, you will do the tournament. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take your student that's on the farthest most to the right with an action. So it has to be a student and an action. Yep. And you're going to send him off to the tournament. So just move him over to the side. You will add up your strength. So your student has a strength and your skill or your action tile that you chose has a strength. So the total of your strength for your student and your action, you're going to compare with the other players to determine who won the tournament.
Yeah, and who was first, second, and third, because you get resources based on who was first, second, third. And obviously being in first, you get a lot more resources.
For sure. And at the beginning of the rounds, you're going to be getting more money and more alcohol, and towards the end, you're going to be gaining more respect. Because respect is worth victory points at the end. The respect that you gain from the tournaments, the respect that you gain when other players pay you respect, it all adds up, and it's worth half of a victory point per respect token.
Right. So every 2 is worth 1.
Yep.
And then you're going to go collect all your actions and all the resources and put them in their respective pools, pull your actions back into your hand, and figure out how you're going to use them next turn. However, the action that was on the tournament stays in place, so you lose that action for the next round.
You lose the action and you lose the student, right? Because they're off at the tournament. They're too busy to be training right now.
Yeah. And then the student pool gets basically shuffled back in underneath the deck, and a whole new set of students come out for the next round. After 5 rounds, you're going to calculate your score and see who the winner is. One of the ways you calculate score is respect. Now, again, as we mentioned before, these respect chips are only worth half a point. So every 2 is worth 1. And then you're going to tally up all your materials, and every 5 materials is worth 1 point as well.
That is if you actually have materials left at the end of the
This
game.
is true. This is true.
You'll also get victory points from your students and from your skill tiles. Now, you need to be intentional about training your students because a broken yin-yang means -1 victory point.
I don't know anybody who did that in the game.
Yeah, I don't know either. Who would do such a thing? A lot of your students and your skills will just have 1 victory point or 2 victory points on them. The number of yin-yangs is the number of victory points. Now, some of them will have a yin-yang with a star, and the star is going to indicate that you have a scaled type of scoring. And these are found on that random student that you got from the beginning. And you're going to know this, like I said, from the beginning, so you can kind of pay attention to it throughout the game. But you're basically going to get a number of victory points depending on the number of a certain thing that you have.
Like
so this
gold,
could be
like
gold.
mine was gold.
Mine was skills. I don't remember what Randy's was. But yeah, there's gold, there's skills, there's alcohol, there's respect. And so you're kind of going to be thinking throughout the game, I want to focus on this one area.
Exactly.
The more of this that I have, the more victory points that I get at the end of the game. So total them up, and whoever has the most victory points is the master of respect.
That's right. And if there's a tie, then whoever has the most face-up respect wins. But if there's still a tie, then the victory is shared.
It's a very respectful tie.
Yeah, it's very respectful.
Yeah.
I mean, these masters are all very nice to each other. No, not really. It's pretty cutthroat. All right, folks, just a reminder, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here is in prototype form. So some of the rules and artwork still might change, so keep an eye on the campaign. Now, with that said, you know, I really liked the engine building. I really liked the decision making in this game. What did you think, Anne?
Yeah, even though the artwork's not final, I love the artwork that I've seen and kind of the direction that it's going. Some really cool pieces to this.
Yeah.
I also really liked the variability, and so the fact that you can pick which skill tiles you want or which master and students you start with. I thought that was a pretty cool ad.
Definitely. So if this looks like a game that might be of interest to you, I'm sure they would appreciate your support. So I think that's it from us. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.